This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. Well, let's talk, hopefully for the last time, about removing Confederate monuments and memorials which honor men who traitorously and violently rebelled against the United States, taking up arms against our country with the intent and purpose to preserve the disgustingly sinister practice of slavery. Simply put, they wanted to own human beings as property, and no one was gonna tell them otherwise. Well, after the Civil War, it was relatively quiet, with the South having just been beaten into submission and forced into unconditional surrender. In fact, there were a handful of these idols to treason scattered throughout the South in the years following the Civil War, but great numbers of them didn't surge until two separate but very connected historical events, both involving the basic civil rights of Black Americans. The first surge in Confederate memorials came during the first few years of the 20th century, when hateful and discriminatory laws known as Jim Crow were enacted. And these laws came on the backs of the 1896 Supreme Court decision, Plessy versus Ferguson, in which the court wrongly and immorally upheld that the principle of separate but equal was legal. And it was during this Jim Crow period when Southerners were using Confederate monuments and memorials as a stark reminder to Black Americans about just who was in charge, and so they'd remember their place in Southern society. The other massive surge in the installment of these miserable reminders of the depths of our own depravity came in the 1950s. Look at this graphic showing the rapid installment of these symbols of oppression and cruelty between 1950 and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And this particular surge started in 1951 when the class action lawsuit was filed against the Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas. The case, Brown versus Board of Education, was ultimately decided by the Supreme Court in 1954, which desegregated schools nationwide, effectively overturning Plessy versus Ferguson. And it also signaled the death of all of those repugnant Jim Crow-era laws in the South. These monuments and memorials were put up all over the South at a breakneck pace over this period, not in an effort to remember their heritage, but instead used as a weapon to drive the derisive notion into the hearts and minds of Black Americans that white supremacy was the foundational concept on which their country was built, and indeed that white supremacy would remain the de facto way of the world. Well, we can stop it with all of that bigoted nonsense. These altars to white supremacy have no place remaining in town squares and public parks. These publicly funded devotions to the oppression, cruelty, torture, rape, and murder that was legal slavery in America should be gone from public places. Let's put an end, once and for all, to intimidation through reminders of the horrors we've visited upon our fellow peoples. Hey everybody, thank you so much for checking out my channel and this video. If you like what I do here and you appreciate it, go ahead and click subscribe. And if you really like it and appreciate what I do and you'd like to join my Patreon family, there's another link there for that. It's not just for the podcast, it's also for YouTube. Thanks a lot.